haven't kicked off all the reporters at the Denver Business Journal yet. So they still voted for me, so that was very nice of them. But obviously, we were excited as an entity, and I thanked a lot of people, and we'll continue to try to win awards every now and then if people will have us. So,
You dressed up nice?
yeah, I dressed up okay, had my hat on, felt good. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And just one more announcement, if you just indulge me for a second. You know, one of my pet projects is the Black America West Museum over in Five Points. And they're having an event this weekend, if you care to drive out east of Greeley to Deerfield. And so this is the annual Deerfield Days, where we celebrate the founding of Deerfield. And if you don't know the history, it's a great history. It's a black township that was founded by several African Americans who came west for a better life, and what's left of Deerfield is still out there. And working with the Weld County Commissioners and the Black America West Museum and UNC Greeley, we're trying to keep the place alive. So if you're available and you want to go out there, we'll be out there from 12 to 4. And there's a great craft brew place in Greeley, which I can't think of the name of right now. Every year, and actually it's for sale right now, they brew something called Deerfield Ale, which is an exact replica of the beer that was brewed in Deerfield by the local population.
Really? That's great.
So with that, we'll go to our committee reports, and we'll start with the EOC with Drew and Ann.
Sure. Ann, if you want to help me out with any of this, feel free.
She's across.
She's
right there.
okay. Hi, Ann.
She's across.
So-
Drew, right there.
Ann, Drew, Ann.
So just to be brief, there were some project updates. Basically, I think Eric Schafran, he's got a lot that I think he manages. What they're working on right now, and correct me, I'm kind of, this is second or third or fourth band. They're working on the regeneration, trying to achieve net zero on this site with waste and water. They're working with the National Resources Defense Council and NREL on that. I think on the whole, to make this a very sustainable site, ultimately net zero.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and they're working on rail consolidation. That sounds very complicated. A parking management study.
Which has two parts.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want? Yeah.
well, I was just going to say, we got word that we're going to get, the second part involves money from NWCAC, which we're super excited, a very competitive grant process. It looks like we're going to get those dollars from NWCAC that will explore regional multimodal solutions, circulators, a whole range of things that impact Rhino and Ballpark, and so it has a bigger impact, but benefits the National Western sites substantially.
I think we'll have fuller updates on those when we get further in the
Yep.
agenda with the
Yep.
NWC
Yep.
project updates.
I'm just touching on
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the issues. I can't speak in depth about much of this. There's an upcoming public realm study that's being done with CPD, and I think for the citizens and residents and businesses in this area, this is a huge issue. The public realm component of the site is something we definitely want to pay attention to, and that's coming up.
I can do that as part of the project.
Yeah, Kelly's probably better. I mean, to me, public realm, I mean, in my background, it means sort of the public spaces. It could be streets, the activation of that, and parks, any public realm. Kelly, do you want to come?
And I'll do an update, but it also includes design standards for the campus as well.
Yeah. So basically, the public spaces that would be available, not the private. I think Atkins is working on a historic analysis, sort of restating Kelly, but.
You're doing awesome. Keep going.
Okay. And then continuing on the master plan, they are starting to look at CSU and National Western, I guess, is looking at the first building, I believe, or one of the first buildings on the site would be the Equestrian Center. And I have it about 570,000.
Water Resource Center would be the first one.
It would-
The Water Resource
the
Center.
Water Resource
It's
Center
about,
CSU would be.
it's somewhere between, it's going to end up, the low end would be 30,000, the high end would be 60,000 square feet. They're
For the
starting to,
water resource.
yeah, which is the first building, it would be right on the river.
But Kelly, will you be talking about the Equestrian Center?
Yep.
Okay, good, so I'm just, this
Yep.
is just a preview. And they're working also with CSU's Institute for the Built Environment on that. They talked about land acquisitions, apparently some of that's very complicated, there's mentioned the international paper. And then one of the portions that I thought was very interesting was the agribusiness? The AECOM did a presentation.
Next
on
Generation Economic Study.
The next generation agricultural economy.
Study.
And I wish somebody else could explain this a little better. Some of it was kind of over my head, but.
And you wanted to correct that?
You know, is someone going to?
We'll actually have them come to this committee
Okay.
once we get a little farther into
Really,
it.
all they were doing was kind of setting up what they will be doing, is what they were
Yeah.
talking about.
Scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think one of the things that I got out of that is that this project has a lot of, this is a whole component of how this could help the whole Denver and regional economies and possibly national. That we're kind of creating new industries and businesses, could lead to a lot of jobs. And so this is kind of a component of this whole, the National Western Center, you know, that is another aspect that I think is very positive and perhaps should be emphasized in the campaign. And that was, that's a pretty good summation of what's been going on. But what was discussed at the EOC.
I have a question that you might know the answer to, Drew. The
Sure.
water, Jocelyn, I think, said something about there being a public input process for the water resources building that's been going on. Do you know if there are, what is this going to be continuing? Or if you know that, Kelly? I think they've had a couple meetings. They're just getting ideas for the water resources, and they're going to be doing some things at CSU. But I haven't seen too much notification of what they're doing down here, because I think those would be good for people to attend.
I think their first step has been to, obviously look inward at the campus and all the various departments that touch water. And one of the things that I think has been a bit of a change for them is not knowing the timing yet of when the larger CSU building would come online, because we can't build that until the expo hall gets built, and the timing of that is not yet set. They're looking to add some programmatic pieces to the Water Resource Center, so they're involving more departments. But they have started some outreach with the more natural kind of water advocate sort of agent groups. And then I think their intent is once they get a general sense of kind of the outline of the program, they will start to probably engage here in Denver and other places to start to test those ideas.
And Drew, I would just add, I think we did get an update on the RTA, and I don't know if we're going to be
Oh,
getting
right.
an update
Yep.
on
We
the
are.
RTA.
It's on the agenda.
So that's very exciting. And my general observation, I'm sure you agree, we heard a lot from CSU at this
Yeah.
EOC meeting. It was very exciting to hear how engaged they've become, and how things seem to be accelerating on their side as well of what they're starting to work on. So that was exciting to hear.
Yeah, and sort of the intersection of economics, education, research, technology. I mean, a lot of things are coming together in this project, which makes it very exciting. And CSU's participation is really exciting.
You guys want to touch on DIA at all? Amy
Well, they
talked
talked
a little bit
about-
about that.
Well, there was the potential of certain project, because there's all this agricultural land out by DIA, that whatever is sort of thought up on a smaller scale or experimented with, I think on the campus, could be tried out in these, the
Plus-
lands out by DIA, would,
Plus just the intersection of commerce, because it is the airport and products can be shipped out from there
Yeah.
and come back. And then the connectivity with the new rail line, which is in close proximity, is not an exact connecting link, but it is close enough to consider it, connected. So there's just opportunities there, and I think that's what Ms. Amy Parsons was telling us about.
Any questions? Anything else?
Drew, is there anything that you feel this group could give you or Ann that would be helpful to your contribution to the executive site committee and the discussions? As far as the mind test types of feedback?
I think as a representative, any concerns that, that we have, as a community, as residents, as small businesses, I'm always open. And I think Ann and I talk, I'm happy to communicate any of those, just sort of at the level of representation. I think we're kind of working on now, or I've approached Kelly on some ways to maybe better represent these communities, to sort of put us maybe more on a par with all of the other big players in this, because it's really kind of these little neighborhoods and then the large institutions that we're dealing with. So I think we have to constantly try to keep a sustained dialogue with them. Maybe I can't give you something that doesn't,
No, that's good, no, that's great,
financially.
well, no, that's, I think that helps everybody. That's
So
good.
I mean, I hope I'm always approachable, either here or you can call me or email me. I hope everyone knows that I'm accessible, and hope you feel comfortable telling me whatever your thoughts are.
Anything else for Drew or Ann? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks.
Next, we'll have the campaign executive committee update with Mr. Sapien.
Everybody get your hiking and walking shoes ready, because we're going to get hitting the brakes here pretty quick now. Actually, Ann's been doing a lot of that already.
Ann Hayes? Oh,
I
Ann
pointed
Elizabeth.
to
And Elizabeth.
I pointed to you.
A.E. Ann Elizabeth.
Yeah. The effort is ongoing, and it's going to have to be escalated and sustained effort for the next 6 weeks. And what we have, Ann's done a whole lot of survey stuff. We're going to hit the streets this Sunday, right?
Sunday from noon to 3, Ann
Right.
Elizabeth, 8 for short.
And we're going to be doing some canvassing work out there. And the closer we get, as soon as we fine tune, I'm going to go through some of these lists and glean some names out of there of people that hopefully I can recruit, convince, twist their arm to join with us. We have a couple other things that we want to try to engage more people in the neighborhood, because they're going to be the bigger beneficiaries, individuals and families in the neighborhood and as a community. So it's not just an election. Like I said, it's not just another rodeo. This is an opportunity to engage people and a sustained effort for the future. Jake, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I got a few things. Now I'm actually going to pass on a flyer real fast for the canvases.
Oh boy, another flyer.
Pass them around. Sorry.
Tell where John's heart is, right?
So we're going to be canvassing in Globeville this weekend, like John said. Swansea next weekend, and Elyria the following weekend. We're going to switch off every weekend, so we can knock all the doors and make sure they know about it, and make sure they're going to return the ballot when it comes. A few updates from the campaign. We're 40 days away from Election Day now.
How many days?
40 days. Almost there.
Yeah,
I
wow.
think the next time we meet,
One,
5
I'm not a one, two, yeah.
something like that. So please sign up, help us go
It is
door
a
to
big
door.
picture.
A few big updates on the door-to-door side. We actually opened up an office 38th and Chestnut. We just moved in yesterday. We moved couches, chairs, and stuff.
Smells pretty good down there.
What's that?
Smells pretty good.
It does, yeah. So we're gonna open that up and have it kind of as our neighborhood field office, so we can stop, make calls, grab a walk packet to go door to door. We also have a team of 10 folks who are going, spreading out throughout the city and knocking on doors. We're knocking about 1,000 doors a day right now. And everybody we're talking to, half the people we talk to say, you know, I'm gonna vote for this. The other half have no idea that there's an election this year. So that means we got our work cut out for us. They're gonna get their ballot in 3 weeks now. So we gotta talk to them once before they get their ballot and talk to them again when they have their ballot in their hand. And then on the outreach side, last week, I think there were probably 40 meetings in Denver with more than 10 people, neighborhoods or other events. And we had somebody at every one of those handing out literature, getting endorsements. We're at 411 endorsements right now throughout the city. The first goal was like 600. We're going to clear that in like a week and a half. So and I got to raise the goals on the team back at the office. So.
I want to interject right at this moment.
Yep.
Because I think I think about 150, how many of the, at least 100 of those are Gloveville area Swansea residents.
Yep.
And I think I've got at least 100.
Absolutely.
And the 3 Gloveville areas, Gloveville Cares, Civic Association 1, Civic Association 2, and the United Community Action Network of Metro, Denver, all of which are registered neighborhood organizations, have endorsed. And you have probably an endorsement in Gloveville every 3 blocks, at least one. And one of the grids on Adams over there in Swansea, 14 endorsements in a 5 block area. And for those of you that want to meet your neighbors, canvassing is awesome. We've knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors in the 3 neighborhoods, and there are hundreds and hundreds of more. So
He is crushing it. Yeah.
Saturday.
Sunday.
Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Saturday, we're going to be attending
Oh, yes.
the Central Committee, Executive Committee of the Democratic Party.
That's right.
Yours truly has finagled a proxy vote, so.
You go, boy. You go. There you go.
I'll be there banging.
This is for Chicago.
Yeah, it's close enough to Adams County.
How many minutes are they gonna give us?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I've made contact with the captain and co-captain in this area, and we're in ongoing communication. And also talked to the county chair of the Denver Democratic Party. So we're gonna be there, and we're gonna show them what we can do and what they can do to help us along on this. So, that's it.
Cool. A few other quick things. There's 2 really big things, though.
3.
Well, so
Hey, you know.
last week we filmed television ads. We don't have videos to show you yet. They're still cutting them and everything now. John was in one.
John's gonna be on TV, baby.
He is.
All right.
So I'm just going to give you the broad strokes on what they are. I have some great pictures.
Phyllis is gonna be on TV,
Yeah.
right?
Right, along with
But
you.
just say something about Phyllis.
Phyllis and her husband Mario, she grew up in Gloveville, and they have a beautiful Habitat for Humanity house, by the way. And Phyllis is coming out of her shell. She's going, I didn't ever think I would. And this is to me part of what the beauty of this is. Individuals who just step up, and it's amazing how you live somewhere and you just get it because you know the time has come. You don't have to have been engaged, but when you get a chance, this is an opportunity. So no matter what anybody says, if they've never knocked on doors, if they've never done anything, Phyllis was just absolutely delighted, and I want to thank Betty Cram because she was going to do the ad, and she didn't do it because she kind of felt like her face was being too many places, which is, and lo and behold, she opened up the, and so then we ended up, and Phyllis had a chance.
And Phyllis did the talking.
Is that right? I wasn't there, so I
Bill
didn't
did
know.
the talking, I was.
You were just a pretty boy.
Yeah, I was just quiet.
Yeah. So anybody, the shyest person in the world, this is a gift.
Sapiens, I
It's a gift.
It's a good one.
Okay.
So we're gonna have 2 ads. It looks like they're gonna start toward the end of next week. One of them, well, both of them are really talking about that this project is about more than the statue.
Oh, for God's sakes.
So,
Terrence, shut up.
so there's a character in both of the ads. It's a 2,000-pound Texas Longhorn.
2,500.
2,500-pound Texas Longhorn, and that's a picture of him. Yeah, he's a kid.
He's a kitty cat. Do they move? Does he talk?
He does not talk to the ad.
I want to know that trainer cat.
The idea is, in each ad, we kind of talk through what the other parts of the project are. This is about bringing CSU to Denver. This is about renewing historic communities, strengthening our economy. This ad kind of takes place in an old Western style bar, saloon. Another ad kind of hops all around town. So this is where you see John. So
That's not John.
That's not John.
You got it, baby. So you can tell, that is, if anybody ever has a drink at the Cooper Lounge at Union Station, that is Marcel. So that is a real life person who actually works at a bar, manages the bar at the Union Station at the Crawford.
Makes a great food beret.
And then this is one of the best shots.
Love that picture.
Was he actually pawing in the ground?
Yeah, he was walking. So,
Did he ever charge the bear?
no.
No.
Sorry.
Ta-da!
All right. The steer's eyeballing John will.
Knock his head a little bit. And then
And the ram.
it's actually packed for the campaign.
Hey, that's right from our building.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
So the other thing that kind of happened at the same time in the last month, we did some research, some polling. We kind of want to give you guys a heads up on where we are with how the campaign's going to play out over the next month. So when we ask people how they're going to vote in this thing, on this ballot measure, 60% say they're going to vote for this. 35% say they're going to vote against it. And that's a great number here, but I want to caution you on a couple things. 60%, 58% is kind of our benchmark for us to think we're going to be in this until election day. 60 is kind of margin of error, so we're still competitive for the next 40 days. It's also a really long ballot question, so by the time you're done reading it, it's like 3 minutes later, and you don't really know what people pulled out of it. So it's a big difference between what they hear on the phone and what they're going to read. The other side of part of that is about a third of people are. Half of the people who are supporting this are very strongly supporting it. The other half are soft. They're leaning this way. And actually 55% of all voters are either leaning in support, leaning against it, or undecided. There's a whole lot of people out there who just don't know how they're going to vote. And that's where our work with John, work with Dave, our work out in the field is really going to have an impact. It's really just firm up that support.
And that's not really unusual for an all-credit election.
Yep.
That's pretty common.
Most people don't know there's an election this year. We got to make sure that they do. Some of the other kind of key things, our pollsters said we had an embarrassment of riches because everything we're doing with this project is really popular when it comes to the opening of the river, opening up access to parks, strengthening our economy, bringing CSU facilities to Denver, renewing the neighborhoods, but also the historic, the history of the stock show, the history of this part of town is so important to people, and it's really motivating for them. So we got to get out there and make sure that they connect the dots, that this project is going to fulfill those goals. And the last thing, this is one of my favorite parts. After we read everybody all these statements, this information, we ask them, if you're going to vote yes, why would you vote yes? And half of people said, this is going to be great for Denver. This is going to be great for our economy. So people really get it. They get the big, wide-ranging impacts of this. We just got to make sure that we talk to them, make this a message.
Is there any other bond on that?
I don't believe there's another bond.
There's none in the bond, but there's a tax increase.
Yeah.
The scholarship fund is 2A, and then the retention of marijuana taxes is 2B, and then 1A is the airport. So we do have more than just one thing on the ballot. And Mickey, there's a statewide ballot question on it also, the retention of the the marijuana taxes of the state. So there's 5 things.
So are you seeing any concern about increasing taxes? Is that an issue that's coming up?
So
It's not an increase, it's a continuation, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not so clear. I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
I think there's a small percentage of people who are worried about that. But at the end of the day, it's them. They're pretty liberal states, so they're pretty comfortable with that. But that's going to be something because it's the last issue on the ballot. By the time people get there, they taxed out. So I have one more thing. It's on our online stuff. Look, John, Dave, Betty all did a little candid testimonial video for us, and we're starting to put those together. I don't have the one with you stars in there yet, but I have one with Tracy Wow from the Rhino Art District. I'm going to try to play it, see if the audio works.
We have speakers.
Give this a shot. So.
Are there speakers someplace?
The speaker's on that
Oh, right
laptop
above.
and very weak, so you're not to be able to. Can you hit full screen?
Turn on the microphone.
You guys just want to be really quiet for 40 seconds.
Can you hit full screen?
Anybody hear that?
It will really give us a great opportunity to really clean up our parks, the mile, it goes from Rhino to the National Western Complex.
Absolutely.
Huge opportunity.
Probably should
See,
join.
it'll create 16,000 new jobs in the area, and that's incredible for us because as a younger generation, we're looking for a place to work. By voting, yes, NWCAC will bring CSU to Denver, which is amazing. They're doing a lot of great work with urban agriculture.
Sorry about that.
Culture, with water quality, with sustainability. That's what we're all about as a city. From concerts to festivals to farmers markets, it's going to be a place that's going to attract people along.
So if you haven't gone on the Facebook page so you can get some of that, you can go on Smart Deal for Denver and subscribe to it so you can get all the push feeds out of the campaign. We're doing a lot on social media, so that way you get to see all the videos. So let me just say one thing that unfortunately my job is just to go find money for this, but I think it's really important. Mickey and I were talking about it earlier. Lately, in the last couple of days, but I also get paranoid, and we're 40 days out, and I will continue getting paranoid until all the votes are cast, right?
Yeah.
But because we have to, and I think what's really important, even though I think the National Western polls very well, and the Western Heritage and the Western Theme does very well, and Jake is absolutely right. We polled the top negative that they could use against us, and they had 3 that were really strong. We have 8 that people think are incredibly good things that are enormously popular. So it's comprehensive. But I think it's really important that we talk about all 8. What I've heard the most is when people don't know about it, oh, come on, really? That much money for the stock show? This is not about just the stock show. And so as you guys are canvassing, as you guys are talking to people, it's really important that we talk about the full breadth. That's why Tracy's video is really good, because it talks about all the other things that it's doing besides that. Because that's not to say people are anti-stock show. They just go, whoa, this much just for that one thing. So as you guys talk to your friends, relatives, whatever, I just want to underscore the fact that we really do have 8 fabulous things that this thing does, and we just need to reiterate it. Clearly, the singular most popular one, we have now polled this 4 times, I don't know why we keep polling it, is the river. And that sucker wins hands down. So it really does. So, but anyway, as you walk through it, I mean, the fact that we were talking about, renovating and revitalizing, not renovating, revitalizing historic neighborhoods is enormously popular. So it's people are very sympathetic to the three neighborhoods, and so it's really important. But I think it is important that we make sure that people get the full scope. I had a conversation with a former councilwoman yesterday who stunned me when she told me she wasn't convinced on 2C, but it's because she thought it was just the stock show. And we just had a very good conversation. And she's the one that I feel created the Colorado Convention Center, but she had also did that. And we can't forget the Convention Center, obviously. But
Definitely.
so, but anyway, just as you guys are doing that, just want to reinforce that. Any questions?
Sorry, I apologize if I missed this in previous meetings or minutes. Have the talking points been shared with this group?
We can do that.
So obviously we'll get prepared when we go out to talk to folks when we canvass, but can everyone kind of get those talking points just in case they're running into people wherever they are to be talking about?
I want to, this is much simpler than people think, and it's much more complicated than some believe. So if you say to somebody, would you like to reinvest in Denver without raising taxes, clean up the river, bring Colorado State University to the neighborhoods, give a permanent home for the stock show, revitalize the economy, bring world-class agricultural research into our neighborhoods, and complete the enhancement of the Denver Convention Center? Would that be a good idea? That's like 15 seconds, and it's there. And people get that in the neighborhoods when we're canvassing. So for those of us in the room that have been immersed in the master planning process, and that's a lot of people here, trust yourself to express what you really appreciate about it personally.
Yeah,
And
I'm not going to stand in front of, would you like to, blah, blah.
No, Lillian, no, I get that. But what I'm doing is for the benefit of everybody, saying, be aware of how much you already know, and we can get talking points. Because if everybody in this room went out and influenced 15 people, that could carry the race. And yes, we can get talking points. And one of the things I've learned in Belleville, Leary, and Swansea, trying to get people out to canvass, is a lot of people are very timid. But it changes like that when they put themselves in the personal values of what this can be, and realize that there doesn't have to be scripted or anything like that. So, but anyway.
Another little update. I'm a firm believer in separation of church and state, church and politics, but it's there.
You want Pope Francis to endorse us?
We had.
He hasn't left the United States yet. Maybe we've got a shot.
Former city auditor Dennis Gallagher and I have been. We're going to get the bishop of the Denver Archdiocese, and we're going to get him. I told Dennis we got to do it. So obviously, because the Pope and everything, I'm sure he's tied down. But we've got a few weeks yet where if we can get a crack through that door, by golly, we're going to be there, and we're going to twist his leg, maybe his arm even, and say, you know what? Your parishes out here will benefit from this. That's going to be our strong selling point. And as Pope Francis said, you have a moral obligation to the people out here. And if we get inside between Dennis and myself, I'm sure we can convince him. Well, certainly, we're going to try like hell.
Mickey?
Okay, I just wanted to bring you an update on that. But we're still at it.
We get those signs up so many neighbors too.
Yeah, signs are coming.
One of the important things is that I found is there's a real opportunity when you go to a meeting. Sometimes we think we have to canvass. But, I had a speaking engagement before 60 people or so, and it was important that I ended with saying, well, you got to support 2C because, and I think that everybody here has meetings that I know Tapiak is having their their big fiesta. Somewhere at that meeting, somebody needs to talk about it. I'm sure you talked about it today, Paul, when you got your award, that while you're here, you 8,000 people, or however many there were there, that place was packed. Support 2C because this is what makes it happen. But we sometimes forget in those meetings, we kind of look at those kind of as its sole purpose, whatever that might be, but there's always, and you have a certain amount of credibility when you're involved in one of these meetings and you're talking about it, and it's a way to get kind of a more mass audience.
Anything else? Aye?
Oh, they're just behind you.
Flossie?
Yeah, I was just curious if Amy or Jake, you have any of the extra of those like flyer fact sheets, because I'm having a bunch of people at my house on Saturday and I'd love to. Really? Awesome.
And one important date, the ballots are being mailed October 13th, so people will be getting those about the 16th, and the drop boxes are active on the 20th. And anybody can legally pick up 10 ballots, and as each individual can, at one time, 10 at a time, you could drop them, so help people get the ballots in. And if you are talking to somebody when they get their ballots, every single one of those people know other voters. And if they have questions, we're going to be around for questions. So people think November 3rd is election day, but there's a window there that we're working with. It's October 13th when they're mailed, so we want to get.
That's the most crucial point
Yeah.
that we have to address. And keep the hype up.
Vern?
I just wanted to mention, you know, in our facility, we have over 50 employees working throughout, which are for different companies throughout. And what I've done is I've taken a bunch of the flyers that you've had, and I've had conversations when some of the people are on break and things of that nature, because probably about 2/3 of those people are Denver residents. And just in situations like that, they know me, they'll listen to a little bit of what I'm trying to say and explain it to them. And I think it just in doing things like that, if you know of businesses or you work in a place where you have employees there, it's not just to the area that we have here. I think we want to spider out into the overall community. And, you know, if you can talk to people and then they can kind of spread it, it can kind of carry on from there. So I think that's one great way to kind of utilize people in one place to spread the word further out into the Denver area. Because, you know, we can't just look at this area. We have to look at the overall Denver community. If we want to get this thing through, that's the only way it's going to happen.
Yep, Carrie?
So for spreading the word, October 8th is the Visit Denver Annual Partnership Meeting. We'd love to have you all join us for that. The registration link is in the weekly roundup, so if you've not registered yet, please do that.
And there's no cost, correct?
There's no cost. It is a free event, but please do register so that we can plan for breakfast accordingly. It will be from 7 a.m. until 9 a.m. in the Belco Theater at the Convention Center. And the focus is going to be the campaign. Mayor Hancock is going to be the keynote speaker, talking about his support specifically for this campaign and why it's important to Denver. So we anticipate having somewhere between 600 to nearly 1,000 people hopefully in the room that day to help us spread the word about the campaign, and we hope to see you all there. Also this weekend at the Convention Center is the Great American Beer Festival, and the campaign is going to have a table there inside the facility. So GABF is just one example of a type of event or show at the Convention Center that can benefit from the expansion that we're talking about. So they were actually really, really excited to say, yes, absolutely, let's set up a campaign table at the event. So we'll be reaching the 60,000+ people that are coming through the doors of the Convention Center this weekend as well.
And it's the singular most popular event for the campaign people who are working on it to sign up to. But we have to thank Visit Denver for working hard, because we wouldn't have cracked it if it wasn't for Visit Denver. So appreciate that. Ed?
I think one other thing is when we're talking to people, do bring in the convention center portion of what this measure is, because it helps dispel the concern that it's just about the National Western. It's about so much more, and talking about the convention center, I think, helps bring that home.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Kelly.
Kelly. Event program.
EPAS. So our two subcommittees, so again, as a reminder, we've got the Executive Oversight Committee that meets monthly, and then we have two subcommittees, the Event Program Advisory Subcommittee, and then the Capital Funding Alignment Subcommittee. I'll start with the CFAS, the Capital Funding Alignment Subcommittee. So that one, I was scanning through my calendar for the dates, but dates have been set for the kickoff for that. And I thought it was still in September, but I think it's early October. We'll kick off CFAS. And Armando from this committee will serve as the representative on that. And again, that committee is about really getting ready for the first round of both the issuance of the bonds, subject to a successful referendum in front of the voters, but also all the other funds that will come into this project and how those funds have to work. So it's a fairly technical group, but one, Carrie Kennedy, the Chief Financial Officer for the city, the Deputy Mayor, will chair that committee, and we've been getting ready, but we'll push the dates. I'll get those out to Roger so we can push the dates out for folks if you want to come to that committee. And then we are working with Ed Nichols and George Sparks are co-chairing the Event Programming Advisory Subcommittee. We've had now, three or four phone calls getting ready for, this of the committee work, this committee has probably the biggest or heaviest lift because when we think about creating a year-round place with events and partners, the expanse of this subcommittee is pretty substantial. So we've been spending some time getting ready for the different components. And I don't know, Ed, if you want to just maybe give a bit of a flavor of some of those conversations.
Well, we've talked a little bit about who and what we might do for different types of participation, who to approach, and who might be partners in this early on in the early phases, but then as we go further out in terms of looking at and participating on the committee and looking at the type of event and looking at seasons. So we don't just talk about what might go on in the summer. What can you do in the fall? What do you do in the winter? What do we do as seasons change? And what type of an audience and participants would you want in each? So we've looked at a number of different scenarios and a number of partners that we can bring on to get this thing going. I think it's going to go very, very quickly once the word starts to get out about these meetings.
Yeah, there will be no shortage of folks probably interested in, and one thought too, and I'm thinking with Chandler here, obviously there's a commitment of this project to the arts. You could envision a whole working group around the arts, just on the arts, because that's such a big part of the effort. So, it's going to be pretty process driven, and when I say that, it's really important that, in particular, that we get a structure in place to talk about all the different kind of partnerships, and so that we can, in an educated way, talk about the different categories of partners, because each of those categories will have different components. And there's, obviously a big part of the focus of that subcommittee will be the campus itself, but then there's also an extensive opportunity, I think, to reach into the neighborhoods themselves and extend the campus in some ways back into the community for more localized opportunities of things that may happen in Globeville area and Swansea and kind of the surrounding region. So we're going to look to probably officially kick off EPAS in October, and then have a series of meetings to get the structure in place. And then I think Ed's right. And I'm really looking to Ed and George to help us kind of shape this. But at the end of the day, we'll get a structure in place, and then that thing will pick up its own speed and start to form in terms of recommendation. And what we'll do is we'll intend that we'll use these meetings as a way to report out, as well as at the Executive Oversight Committee. Any questions on those two subcommittees?
Yeah, I appreciate the progress, and Ed, I'm glad you're sticking around and going to be part of this. And I think George Schultz is phenomenal. And I'm deeply saddened and concerned about the type of thing that you've just described as very creative, to have not been invited to be involved in these initial brainstormings around the formation. As a person that is from this group, been asked by this group to be part of the developing the planning mind trust and this kind of thing. And I feel some concern about this because, I've talked to Kelly about it a little bit, and I just feel like there's something that you're describing that's essential, that is really what the heart of the germination of this subcommittee is, and I think it's an appropriate place for everyone that's part of this committee to be involved, and I would request that that happen. So I would like to reach out to you and to George, and I'll have a conversation with you just to kind of...
I'd be happy to talk to you.
That'd be great.
Good.
And then I understand about the infrastructure and that kind of thing, and I think that there's people in this room, too, that would have many exciting ideas about programming and partnerships and that kind of thing. So
I think that's one of the early things we'll do is talk about the infrastructure, as you say, and then look to the communities, look to other participants to bring ideas forward on how this might work.
And when you're talking about, what can happen in the fall, what can happen in the winter, what can happen, those are fundamentally creative things, and I think to be talking about those at this stage and bringing them in is something that we can be involved in at any stage. So,
We'll be reaching out. There's no question.
good, that's great. Well, it's progress. Do you have a specific date on that yet, or?
No, we haven't set the official kickoff date
Gretchen
yet.
was going to get back
Yeah,
to you.
it's going to be in October.
Yeah, it'll be October, probably second half.
Yeah.
I'm a little, CSU I know is a main capital partner, but I don't know why it's not on the, and I know it's all linked together, we're all linked together, but it's, when you get people in the room that are the essential capital partners brainstorm, the essential partners brainstorming, the educational partners, but I know we can broaden it and we can bring that in.
So are you concerned they're not part of the committee?
Yeah, I
They
understand.
are part of the committee.
Okay, I didn't see them listed.
Yeah, no, they will be part, each of the 5 MOU partners are part of every committee.
Okay, I didn't see that in the profile of the committee.
Yeah, no,
so maybe I have the wrong iteration.
Every MOU partner is a part, just as as the CAC has representation on each committee.
Then it's a cornucopia.
Yeah. And I want to just, so we're clear, is that, look, I mean, in a perfect world, we would have started these committees sooner. But the reality is, the EOC really needed to get established. We've got 5 meetings under our belt. It's taken some time, I think, for George and Ed and us to, there's resourcing the city has to provide to staff these committees. This is not inconsequential in terms of the kind of staffing that is required. And the thoughtfulness of how you get agendas set and all the behind-the-scenes work that has to happen so those meetings can be successful. So, it's taken a little more time, but at the end of the day, the work product will be more efficient and more effective and hopefully more comprehensive in terms of making sure that we are capturing all those opportunities in a way that we can then organize them so that they can be delivered. So thanks for your patience as we kind of tee these up.
And it's sequencing. You can't put certain things ahead of others. And this is, I think the sequence is a very important part of this. It's working.
Yep.
Well, just analogously, and I know we have to move on, one of the things we experience in the neighborhoods with when there's, say, a park that's being put together is when do we talk to Public Works versus when do we talk to the parks and that kind of thing. And actually, the most successful projects are those where in the early stages, even setting the infrastructure of a committee is part of the people becoming literate in the neighborhoods in governance. So anyway, we can talk about this more, but I appreciate the progress.
I'll meet with you, Amy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ed.
So Kelly, I have a question here. So on 3 and 4, so there may be some overlap between project updates and NWC.
Actually, they're not updates. Those are NDCC, so those are projects other than the national ones.
National ones.
So there's no overlap.
There's no overlap.
Okay.
Well, there's alignment because there's planning alignment, but there's no overlap.
I was just trying to see that. I was trying to be
efficient. I understand.
So Discover Denver Globeville neighborhood survey. John.
That's me and Beth. As Historic Denver has a program that's been that we're doing in conjunction with the City of Denver, and have actually had some grant projects that have been wonderfully funded by the State Historical Fund to do a survey of all of Denver and all of the architectural elements that we have in Denver. We just got done with the first full neighborhood down at Jefferson Park, but now we've been talking a long time about how these things are going to work in the neighborhoods and not necessarily on the Stockton site. This is something that's going to be working within the neighborhood. So this is a survey project that's going to go from Gloveville to Elyria, Swansea. And I'll just, before I go into it too deeply and get something wrong, I will introduce Beth Glandon, who is our Director of Discover Denver. And so she's going to be leading this effort, which is going to be a number of volunteers. I'll let her talk about it a little bit more. Yep. I'm stopping. You're the expert on it.
Did anybody pick up a pair of glasses? I can't find my glasses, an extra pair. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Did you leave them?
Store glasses.
Did you leave them at?
They were with me earlier today.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
They're here
Okay.
earlier.
Right.
So, sorry, I apologize. I just forgot.
Okay, as John said, my name is Beth Glandon, and I work with Historic Denver, and I work on a project called Discover Denver. And Discover Denver is a citywide architectural survey, and when we say citywide, we really mean citywide. There are 160,000 buildings in the city of Denver, and we want to know a little bit about every single one of them. So the project is a partnership between Historic Denver, the City and County of Denver, and also History Colorado. We're funded primarily by a state historical fund grant. The goals of the project, in addition to surveying all of the buildings, are to identify those buildings that are either architecturally or historically significant in each neighborhood. So in addition to just what are the big fancy buildings, we want to know what those buildings are that are culturally significant to each and every neighborhood. And we're not just gathering all of this information and locking it in a vault. A very big part of the project is taking that information and making that available to the public. So I don't know, John's probably heard me say this a million times, but if a neighborhood does not have a fancy new restaurant or a chic new shop, most people have no idea what's in that neighborhood. They don't ever bother to go visit one of the 78 neighborhoods that are in the city. So one of our goals is really to educate the public about what gems architecturally are throughout the city and the rich history and stories from each and every neighborhood. So we've been at this for a little while. We've surveyed about 5,000 of the 160,000 buildings. So it's not a short-term project. Yeah, we're almost done. We've got a ways to go. We expect this will probably take up to 10 years. So we've surveyed down in Harvey Park, which is down in the southwest part of the city. We surveyed parts of Park Hill and Berkeley. We surveyed part of Cole, which is just south of here. And then we also did survey the 45th Avenue Commercial District in Gloveville. So we've done a little bit of work in Gloveville. So, and as John mentioned, we're in Jefferson Park right now, which is just north of the Mile High Stadium. And we're just about finished with that, and hopefully we will be done on Tuesday, so we can cross your fingers. It's been a long go. One of the things about this project is that we are not designating any buildings as historic. This truly is just gathering information. So, and one other thing that's very important to know about the project is that we do this all with volunteers. So we have a mix of folks that are retired architects, we have college students, and we have just members of the public that love new buildings. So it's a really fun project. And why am I telling you about this? So our next area, once we're done with Jefferson Park, we'll be moving into Gloveville. And we're hoping to do that within the next few weeks. So, and once we're done with Gloveville, we will move eastward into Elyria and into Swansea. We expect that overall, this is going to take probably about 6 months to move through the 3 neighborhoods. We'll be out there 3 to 5 days a week with volunteers, standing out there snapping pictures of buildings and talking with folks if they want to come out and talk with us. That's where we get some of our best information. We'll have a lot of folks that will come out and say, why are you taking a picture of my house? And then they get excited about the project when we get some great information, because people love to talk about their home or the building on the corner. We get great information about what's out there.
So again, surveyors are all volunteers. And so we're really hoping that we're able to get some volunteers from the 3 neighborhoods to help us out with it. It's a great project. And I think it's really important to have volunteers from each of the neighborhoods. One of the things that we are hoping to do is have a photo and story day. So possibly at the public library in, I think it's Illyrian. And we would have a day where folks from the neighborhoods could bring historic photos or stories, and we could scan information and really help tell the stories of the buildings of these neighborhoods. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
What type of what's the final, is there a product, like some way to document it? Is it some sort of book or some kind of, what form? And when you say survey also, is it photos and sort of some text and you just describe, sort of just tell the story behind it, right?
It's all of those.
Okay.
So it's not an easy answer. So we actually, our surveyors have little handheld tablets, and we have software where we document buildings. So we'll take a photo with the tablet, and then we'll describe the building. What style is it? What year was it built? And collect information about it. So I think there are about 65 attributes that we collect. The goal is, from an online presence, to have a website where people can access anything about any parcel. They can click on it, and they can see the history of the building and learn a little bit about its architecture. So, and then from not everybody is tech savvy or online. So we're still trying to figure out what that looks like, whether that's a report or what the non-online presence might look like.
I was just going to say, have you ever seen a book called The AIA Guide to New York City?
Yes.
Yes. It's really the most amazing book. I mean, it's been published. I had a version like from 30 years ago. It's just every building will tell the stories that you would never have known, and it's just so much fun to just read. And so maybe you could produce something like that, and just if you take a look at it, I have a copy if you want, but it's just I think as a model, it's really just a fun book.
I mean, that is definitely a goal, to have something like that out there, but this is also going to be hooked up into the GIS system with the City and County of Denver. So professionals, developers, real estate professionals will all be able to access the same information, just like lay people across the city, so that all of this information about what our history, the history about our city has to hold. So it's going to be something that we hope helps at both the professional as well as just the interest level. And it just makes it a lot easier for a lot of planning to go on out in the city as well. Because the City of Denver has never done a comprehensive survey before. And one of the reasons is because this is about a 10-year effort. This is something that nobody has really wanted to grab on to, because it's just so much work to be able to do. Yeah. And the technology is helping us. Just a few 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this without astronomical prices into like the $74 million, I think they figured out, if we did a standard historic clipboard survey of all the properties that we're dealing with. And that was something that was a big negotiation between History Colorado, between Historic Denver, and between the City of Denver, to make sure that we have solid information, but that we're also able to do it in an efficient and quick enough manner that it really becomes something that is useful. And so each time that one of these neighborhoods gets surveyed, we're gonna pump this right into the city's services, and so this is going to be available right away. Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah.
Just about every week I see a new building being groomed for another marijuana growth. So I'm glad you're on this fast.
Dave?
Now, is this gonna filter in also with the history thing that Judy did? And is this gonna be in the archives at the library? And also, let's say on a certain Saturday, and you said, these people bring their stuff, they'll scan it, Because see, there's still a lot of people that wanted to get in on the history of Globeville, Swansea, and Elyria that never did, and they've got a lot of stuff. And they could bring it, you scan it, and then separate it out. This would go to the archives and the history for the library, this would go for what you guys did. Is that possible?
It may be
orchestrate
possible,
that?
and it kind of depends on the library's capability of taking it. I would think that they would love that information, and that it could be available in other places, but that would be up to them.
They said they would,
Okay,
as a follow-up to Dave's question.
okay.
When we had our session down there with them last summer,
Yeah,
they
see-
said they would.
Okay,
I
great.
guess you just gotta have to find the money. I mean, I had talked to people that, well, the old Tallarico family, that you know, that's a very old family, and they've got all kinds of stuff. And they were willing to bring it down, but we never did get the time set up, you know, to do this.
We will get something set up, and we will let you know when that is, because we would love nothing more than to have everybody in the neighborhood show up.
Ann?
So is this a building by building survey, or will you also go a step further and kind of identify like subdivisions as they've been, you know, put together, or settlements, I guess you might call them, like sometimes when people move to Denver, they came kind of all together, they, you know, so there's a lot of rich history as to why maybe even a cluster of houses is together. That would be very interesting as well.
Right, and another separate part of the project, right? So we're documenting the buildings, but for a number of the buildings, we're also researching the history, who built it, what was owned it over the years. So we are trying to, you know, understand the history and significance of the buildings, and that, in a number of cases, includes a cluster of buildings.
And then one other question, is there a time period that you're interested in? So are you attacking neighborhoods kind of like based on when they were built? And will this be kind of a living document over time?
That's a really, no, sorry, I missed that in my notes. But one of the main reasons that we're coming here next is that the neighborhood plans have just been adopted. And one of the recommendations in both the Elyria, Swansea, and the Globeville neighborhood plans was that a survey be done. So we're coming in on the heels of that. We are looking, you know, back to the beginning of the establishment of these neighborhoods.
As pertains to a building right now where this all comes together and relates to the National Western relationship to the neighborhoods, the Wester Camp building, I think it's the corner of 51st in Washington, or is it 50th? Do you know? That used to be Wester Camp's right there. The new owner is Matt. And the minute he bought it, I went in there and gave him the neighborhood plan. He didn't even know there was a neighborhood. Now he's posing the question, and he posed it to me the other day. Do you think it would be better if I scrape this building and put the building up that the city wants, or to do a historical thing? And then they want me to do all the pylons and everything. And I said, oh, Matt, please, talk, open a call, talk to the neighborhood. He's talking about it. So I feel like the National Western Center Citizens Advisory Committee on the master plan has a potential, hey, let's talk to this guy and let's get creative. Because for those of you that don't know what's happening in Globeville, we've got a Sarco turning into a commercial development, and the Wester Camps is kind of the last corner of a traditional historic building right there. And I would love myself, and it will change the whole entire neighborhood, feel of the neighborhood. And I'm just so afraid that I'm so busy, and we're trying to get him to talk to everybody. But I would encourage people to go in there and say, you know, we heard you were trying to figure out how to incorporate this history, and I'll go get a cell phone picture right now and bring it to you so that you can accelerate this, because he is considering scraping that. And I said, why do you think the city wants this prefab building? He said, well, it's in the pictures. And I said, no, those are placeholders. Those are renderings. So we have, this is so critical, and I feel like the National Western Center, there could be a collaborative situation going on between the National Western Center.
Tell them to tear the damn place down and build a new one.
Yeah, well, there's several ways to go about it. There's several ways to go about it so that the historical is part of the new. And I just want us to be able to have that conversation before we lose all of the historical.
You could also get in touch with us, obviously.
Yeah, I will do that immediately. I'll do that immediately.
So one last question.
Yes, sir.
What about the buildings that have been torn down? Are you doing anything, you know, you go through Globeville and most of it is gone.
You know, obviously, from a survey standpoint, there's nothing left to survey, right? But that is history that we would love to get to capture.
We have archives, so.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, that's something.
So
we
are
would
you
love to
filling
capture.
that in when,
That's.
That will probably be more of a summary aspect to a lot of the neighborhoods in terms of what was there. The issue is right now that we've never done a comprehensive survey to what even is there. So that is the main goal, to find out what is there, what is salvageable, what is can be incorporated into the new plan. What is the importance of each individual building that's out there. But the story of these neighborhoods is also about those buildings that are lost. And so that will probably be more into the summary. And if we get more information in those history days and the public can bring in photos of that, then that makes that report and the online portion richer, because then we do have stories of what was there and the kind of the timeline of what happened on a particular site.
It certainly fills in.
Dana Crawford.
Well, exactly. Dana Crawford was one of our co-founders. So we were
John,
always
then
talking.
Ed, then back to Ann, and then we'll probably have to cut this off because it's
Now-
7 and we have like 50 minutes of work left.
Maybe are you just doing buildings?
Yes.
I think that's
Why?
kind of a mistake.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should do other.
Like what?
Like
So,
John.
What are you thinking, parks or
Possibly.
possibly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sites, as Mickey brought up.
Right.
And Elizabeth was talking about that.
well, again, this is 165,000 properties that we're dealing with, and it's a 10-year process just to deal with that. And this has been a long-term discussion about how that is going to meld in with all the little aspects. And the Parks Department and other departments have some of those surveys of their parkland. And so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to make sure that we're picking up what has never been picked up.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the park. And I'll tell you, I'm coming from a biased point of view.
Sure.
Okay? I see so much history that's been lost,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm aging on this committee. So one of the things, I have no confidence in what they've done. The city people, the parks people, and
Yeah.
that's my personal bias, because they've been dicking around for so long with other issues right under our nose. And I would ask you to consider seriously what people bring forth to you, whether they're pictures, not just buildings, and I think that's probably one of the greatest criticisms. It's great to have the old buildings, God, every time I go downtown, I think about what there. But people had lived there before, and you're talking about the spirit that the city thought they had crushed when they built that goddamn highway through our neighborhoods. And they didn't break us, they reinforced us, a hell of a lot stronger than the concrete that we poured in there. And that's the history that I want you to emphasize. And buildings are important, because they tell a great story. But the greatest story is being told by people and what they've experienced. And that's our Western heritage at every level of culture that you can think of.
I can tell you we reject nothing of that people
Okay, you're
bring
gonna
in.
get us
I can tell you, when people bring things in, we reject nothing about that. So that's
Dave
all
and I
we
are
want
making
is
a
the
pact.
story.
You're gonna get it.
Example, Northside Park. Used to be in the old sewage plant.
Sure.
Before that, it was a Tallarico Farm.
Yeah.
I do have some little examples. I do have some things that I'm going to pass around to kind of give you a little overview of this project, so you can just look at it. And we're available later to answer questions.
And I see you, Ed, then Ann. And
I
then
just want to make a quick comment, so
or
that
Ann,
the
yeah,
building
yeah.
has been scraped recently, don't forget about Google Earth, because there's pictures of.
Google Earth is a huge part of this project. Yes. Yes.
Mine is just a summary comment. I think when you listen closely, you heard him say this is a 10-year project. I think it's so important that you've already moved into the Globeville area. As you look at this, It's a great time to be documenting what's here now. As you go forward, this will be very useful in the future. And I think it's a wonderful project. And with only 9.7 years to go on it, it's in great shape.
Job security. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to do, so these are NDCC updates, and I'm just going to talk about the most immediate ones, which are just a few of the 6. So the first is we are marching quickly towards finishing the design construction documents for Brighton Boulevard from 29th to 44th. So CH2M Hill has been doing that work now for some time. We're wrapping up that, where there will be a handoff that happens in November between CH2M Hill, who's done the design work, and Kiewit. Kiewit has been selected by the city through a competitive bidding process to be what we're calling an integrated contractor. A lot of credit to Public Works for how they set this up, but this is integrating all the various projects in River North, kind of the region, and leveraging the expertise of in this case, Kiewit, to help us implement these projects. But there will be a handoff in November, and then start to prepare for the construction of Brighton Boulevard that will begin in 2016, and then take a year, 18 months or so to build. So, and we've told property owners on Brighton that as part of this handoff, Kiewit will step in, and we will start to engage property owners on Brighton about the strategies for implementation, so that everybody is aware of how they're going to attack rebuilding Brighton Boulevard. So, so that you'll see the handoff happen here in November, and then Kiewit start to ramp up. There's a whole communications team. We're going to throw a lot of communications resources at this, because we know there's nothing more frustrating than for a property owner that is right on a main thoroughfare like this, and they can't get a hold of somebody, and they've got some issue because the contractor hit their power or hit their phone. So that'll be another part of this conversation, to make sure folks are aware and how to get a hold of a human being so that we can respond to their issues. So that's one. 2, related to work going on in the corridor, the new 33rd Street and Festival Street, that's also in the works in terms of design, as well as Wink & Associates was selected to do the Rhino Park work. That design work is underway. There's been one public meeting. There will be a second public meeting coming up here in October on their progress around the River North Park, which is between 33rd and 35th. And what's really exciting about that, not only is it a new park, but they're going to start to design the first component of the promenade, which will be repurposing Arkins, which is currently a road, into this pedestrian-focused mall that'll be part of a much larger project. The promenade would run all the way from potentially Cuernavaca Park all the way up past the National Western, and hope, our goal is to talk to Adams County about how we take it past the Denver border. But anyway, the first segment of what that mall could be, this promenade, will be happening at the park between 33rd and 35th. So you'll see the first discussion about that at the next public meeting. So those are the most immediate things happening. We also have, we're working with RTD, so it's hard to believe in 2016 the East Line will come on, activated, operational here in early 16. So there's going to be parties at the stations, one at 38th and Blake, which I think Rhino Arts District's involved in helping organize, and Eric is working with the community, or starting that process, to do the one at 40th in Colorado. And then later in 16, we'll do the same thing for the Gold Line for the station at 41st and Fox. So those stations will, those three stations will come online in 2016. So those are the most immediate things we're working on. The other real big thing is Army Corps of Engineer and the work that's happening on the South Platte, and the study that the Army Corps is working through relative to the Platte. So that's underway as well, with a lot of stakeholders. And the RFP, yes, the first step from CDOT, the RFP, so they had the RFQ, they shortlisted a group of firms. The first component of the RFP is now out, and the firms that were part of the RFQ will be responding to that RFP over the course of between now and they're issuing the RFP in components. So it's, I think, 4 issuances of the RFP. Yes?
So, Kelly, we hear often about the work that the Army Corps of Engineers is doing on the Platte, but is there some way, I know that's outside of your purview, but is there some way to find out at some point, like, what they have planned or what they're doing or progress?
Sure, we can build that in, sure. There's a whole army of people that are both within this.
Yeah, no pun intended.
No pun intended. Yeah, there's a large group of people, the water experts, folks, urban drainage, city, parks, et cetera, that are working on that. But why don't we'll plan on bringing a group in to talk about the progress and then what the plan looks like in terms of how they ultimately get to recommendations. I mean, we're still in the early just assessing what's there now. And then ultimately this deliberative process will have some public meetings, and then they'll ultimately make recommendations for improvements to the plat.
Just to know.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get those scheduled.
Their next public meeting is in January.
January.
Oh, really, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a website.
But we'll get you the date. We'll pull the date.
Why don't we just get the link for the project and add it to the roundup?
I could spend 3 hours talking about all the work we're doing right now, but those are the most immediate ones and super focused on Brighton and getting Brighton started.
If anybody, we'll also provide the link to the RFP.
Okay.
To see that.
All right. Any questions on other NDCC stuff?
Seeing none, we'll move on.
Okay.
To the drainage project update.
Well, first, I am so excited to welcome back
I know.
Jen Hillhouse, back in the house.
But Jen, we have one comment.
Yes.
Where's the picture of the baby?
I know.
That should have been what you started with. We have lived with your pregnancy. You know?
Carried him through the whole time. Wow.
That's right.
Well, it's good to be back. I miss you guys, and it's so. It's just exciting to hear about the ballot and all the work that's been done. So. I am managing a new project, but it's not too far from where we kind of left off. So we were excited to come in today and talk to you about, okay, thank you, our progress and really kind of our launching point. So we have a project, we're calling it Platte to Park Hill, the Storm Water Systems Project. So it is a big project. We have a lot of water coming at us in this area, as you guys know. With the flooding, and we had the NWCAC days that kind of highlighted that. But I think, these pictures down below, things that you probably have experienced, neighbors have experienced. And as we, think about new infrastructure that the campus will bring and historic neighborhoods, how might we protect these, especially as the 70s coming in, and providing protection to that facility as well. And really, we looked at, all the neighborhood plans, really kind of teed this project up, as well as I-70 was a catalytic project for us too. But, the neighborhood plans identified flooding, need for multimodal connectivity, and health, economic development. So this project is a drainage project, but we're really pulling up and thinking about city building and urban design and how we might think of drainage as a base, but then how we connect people through drainage. So you can go to the next slide. This is hard to see, and I have a rollout map, but I should have brought it on a board. This is a depth map, and it looks a little, maybe a little complex, but really it's not. It's pretty simple. Blue is pretty good, and red is where we're really flooding. So this is City Park here, and you can see all the red. This is a 100-year event where the water is coming, and this is Montclair Basin. It's our biggest basin in Denver. This project will look at two basins, the Montclair Basin and Park Hill. So Park Hill is on this side, and you can see the water. So all the water is coming right here. This is National Western and neighborhoods, Larry Swansea. And so a lot of ponding here. It kind of moves through the Topsy site and then gets into, just north of I-70. So as this project comes in, we're kind of thinking about opportunity throughout the basin in this area that will really start to cut off the water, and all this color will go away. We won't see any more flooding in that part of the city on a 100-year basis. Of course, you'll have sheet flows, and you'll have some 5-year events where their streets are really intended, they do carry our water. We design our streets to carry some flows, at least to 6 to 12 inches. So that's what the blue is showing you, is that that kind of meets city standards for carrying the water through the city when house fall. So our focus areas here are what we call the EADP. This is the early action item. So Coliseum, here's Cloquet Landing Park, and Brighton Boulevard, I-70 at the top. Then we have our next focus area, which is kind of in the pole and all the way to City Park Golf Course. And then third would be the Park Hill. That's a separate basin, but something that we're also looking at. So, you know, I kind of mentioned this before, we're trying to solve a lot of problems with this project, not just drainage. We're obviously thinking about the 100-year protection, but also enhanced multimodal connectivity, water quality amenities are really important in the health of the river. Reconnecting the street grid and developing innovative placemaking. So as we start to think about how the project lays out, how might we put some urban design elements in there that start to create that space of that public space. And then creating opportunity for open space, of course, in an area that really, that was another big one in the neighborhood plans, that there was no access to parks. So how might we think about providing that connection? So our goals, these are draft goals. We should have draft across there. Sorry about that, but you know, we're just starting to reach out to the public. We have stakeholder interviews, kind of one-on-ones that we're starting with. Many of you in this room have been contacted, and we'll continue to make that contact. But these are, as we looked at the neighborhood plans, as we started to think about the community needs at a high level, we developed these 6 goals. Really, you know, providing that 100-year protection, new community amenities that are integrated into the urban context. So really thinking about what's already there and how this starts to weave within the existing fabric. Enhancing multimodal connectivity, restoring functionality of the Montclair and Park Hill drainage basins, and that's really to increase the nature. So increasing water quality and habitat throughout the project, and then eventually getting to South Platte River. And involving and engaging the community. So this is kind of our first kickoff. We did have an NWCAC. We were at the open house, but this is kind of our first reach into the community, and many more. We have a big process ahead of us because of the area. I mean, all the way to City Park and all the way to Park Hill. So we're covering our big swath. And then, of course, keeping the project on schedule and on budget. We get to schedule at the end of this little presentation, but the schedule is really important to us. We have a commitment with CDOT to be operational by September of 2019 for the Montclair and Park Hill, and for the EADP Globeville is 2017. So these improvements are real. We will see improvements, you know, especially when you're thinking about the city at a pretty fast pace. And I should have mentioned, you know, where we left you off with the map, where we all kind of came with the master plan of the open channel through Globeville Landing. That set up the EADPF. That's what we're looking at for open channel through Coliseum and enhancing Globeville Landing Park. So the public process that we've outlined, and again, as we have stakeholder interviews, we will look to have influence on this process. So we're definitely open and flexible to making sure that we are creative and innovative and really working with how we'll be successful. But we see it as a 3-step process. GBSM is our consultant that will lead us through the process. They're also on Brighton, so there's some good connection there and good synergy. But the step 1, you know, developing that framework and doing some site analysis, and then forming working groups. And that site analysis, that's where really then is data collection, technical analysis, trying to understand the box that we're trying to work within prior to developing alternatives. So now we're kind of moving into that development criteria. These will be based on our goals. The goals all have objectives underneath them that then will screen back to the goals that we set. So the goals are really important to make sure that we have right at the beginning of the project. And then as we move through alternative development, you know, that's how we kind of get to that preferred alternative. So design alternatives, we will have alternatives for all of the Montclair and the Park Hill Basin, developing many, many alternatives, just like we did in National Western. We came out with a bunch of options of how we might start to think about the site. And then we narrowed in on one that kind of worked with all the goals that we were trying to achieve. So very similar process. And then that final step is the screening, as I explained, getting to that preferred. And then we'll move into design and procurement early next year. I think I might do one more. So our schedule For the Montclair outfall, so we renamed it, I forgot. We'll change those graphics, but this is Montclair outfall is the early action item, or what is in Globeville Landing Park. That's in progress for design right now. Because we did some planning and we kind of identified the location of the channel and where our needs were and what was important to connect into the campus. We moved into just starting that design and having small groups that will be formed. I should be a little bit more clear about that too. Those one-on-ones will lead to a stakeholder working group, and then we'll go to a larger working group, and then we'll have 2 public meetings. This is part of our public process. So for the Montclair and Park Hill Basin, we're planning to get to a preferred concept by the end of the year, and that's for within each segment of the project. Construction will begin for the Montclair outfall, so this is within the Globeville Landing Park, the spring of 2016, spring of next year, and preliminary design begins for the rest of the project this fall, with construction, depending on how we procure, if it's design build or CMGC, all that kind of identifies how construction and design will go, but we're planning to move into design and construction early next year. And then just lining you up with I-70's construction and how that, our goal is before they dig a hill, we have to be, or a trench for the lid, we have to be in operation to protect that infrastructure. So that's what's really driving our schedule. There's a lot of detail, so that was kind of just high level. I don't know, Andy or Kelly, if you have any other important components that I missed.
No, I mean, like the National Western Center Master Planning, there's a whole team behind Jen. The way this is organized around I call it the Coliseum parking lot solution that feeds into Globeville Landing Park. So there's a team around that, and then Jen's leading the part from the east of that all the way through the Park Hill Golf Course, and then there's literally an army of engineers and planners that are supporting those 2 leads, our project leads, to get to. And then we have, similar to the National Western, we have an executive oversight committee that is helping provide policy support and policy guidance, and then ultimately decision making within the city structure. So knowing we're up against this timing pressure, so Jen walks through this and makes it like it's a pretty straightforward process. But this is as complex as the National Western or anything else we've done. I mean, we're solving a long-standing problem in one big stroke by doing this. So, and it's complementary to I-70. It certainly supports I-70, but it's for us, for the city, it's the big move for Public Works and for all of us was by pushing this solution to the south of the highway as far south as we could, protects more of our city, protects the city, and starts to really fix the fact that we built over creeks, and the water still wants to flow where those creeks are.
And that's a good point. I mean, there literally was Montclair Creek that kind of came through the city. We have old soils, and we can start, and there's no images that we've been able to see, but to Joan's point of that site history, maybe we'll dig up something through some of your great work, but literally we built on top of creeks, and so now we're trying to have to navigate through the urban and built environment to reestablish a waterway for the water to travel in those major events. And I think too, I know it can be confusing about how does this relate to I-70, and really it is, they are a partner, we're working collaboratively with them. But their kind of solution put a pipe up against their infrastructure and was going to carry the water to the river. And that, we saw, it didn't protect the community. It really was a solution for the highway. And so we just really saw an opportunity to pull it away, look up basin, and urban drainage is also doing an outfall systems plan. It'll kind of come on the tail heels of us. So you'll start to hear about that too. And Shay Thomas with the with the district will be leading that effort. And so really, you weren't up against time commitments. You would look at the entire basin and start to create solutions. But we're kind of starting at the outfall and working up, and then it goes south of City Park even. I mean, there's huge flooding in this entire basin. So it just gives us really good opportunity to connect the city, to think about health and water quality and just not shoving the water into a pipe. So we just saw it as it's a really great project, very complex. And I think the complexity with the schedule, if we had all the time in the world, it would still be hard. But because we are up against, 2017, 2019, we've got a lot of work to do and make sure that we do it in a good way.
Yeah, just quickly, are there, two quick questions, are there federal constraints or federal mandates on stormwater that are also affecting this? And if you could just address that briefly. And then secondly, there's been this sort of sputtering of conversation around the stormwater treatment associated with Heron Pond up there that kind of comes and goes. Can you kind of put that back on the table and just the status of what's going on relative to this? Because that's an area where there's a lot of potential engagement with the National Western Center, educational programming and things like that.
Sure. So this is not identified as a FEMA floodplain for your first question. So no federal mandate there. There's no federal funding, so it is a city-led project, and we'll just be meeting our own criteria, our own standards. It does make it a little simpler, yeah. And then as far as make sure I understand your question correctly on your second question.
Well, there was some acreage that was going to be used by Public Works for stormwater.
That's a different basin. That's a different basin.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I want to talk about just a little bit. And if there's any way anything can be leveraged in relationship to this because of the interrelatedness of the projects. So I mean, maybe a longer discussion that if there's this kind of a sphere of influence beyond the borders of the particular constraints of one basin. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that there's something that we can get creative about beyond the conventional borders of the basins. There's some potential there, I think.
Sure, and I think, Andy, this is why you have experts behind you, because they come up with these great analogies that really start to make sense. But he always says it's kind of like the continental divide. The water is going to go on either side, and really you can't. The water doesn't transfer basin. It stays within its basin because of geographic, and it follows. So it really, although there might be a higher level opportunity to think about water quality and health to the Platte, because everything is flowing into the river, for the basin, they are very separated.
Yeah. So it's an area for creative discussion. And I get the water flows. I'm down with it.
John?
Yeah, John.
The outlet at the Globeville Landing area, is that going to be enlarged, or is it being proposed to be enlarged, or?
From how we left it up in the master plan, is that what you mean, or the actual outfall?
The physical.
The physical outfall.
Is it going to be bigger?
It will be enhanced. It will also be bigger, yes.
Okay.
But it will look a lot better than what it does right now. And so they have really good ideas of how you start to create, spillways and allow for water quality. So that would be kind of, we're meeting with you, we're reaching out to the community to kind of start with those one-on-ones, and then that small working group is where we hope to start to put in front of you some concepts.
Well, one of the concerns that's been brought up several times in the past in previous discussions in the neighborhood, we just celebrated the 50-year anniversary of the '65 flood, and ironically, when Globeville got flooded, it came on the west bank over where McDonald's is now. Yeah. And a lot of people were convinced that the river itself was full of water, obviously, but the push from the Park Hill Montclair drainage basin is what pushed it over and flooded Globeville. And I don't know, I have no facts, but a lot of older people in the neighborhood, they're gone now. That was the oral history that they had, and that's where the water came out of the Platte River, just north of the railroad track there.
A couple of the interesting facts that come out of this already. One is the flow. When Jen showed that map of the 3 feet of water kind of plowing through the community, that's indicative of 2 South Platte rivers. So when you think about the amount of water in the Platte, it's double that. So that actually doesn't surprise me at all, John. You think of it that way.
Well, the concern that I have is that, we're going to drain Montclair and Park Hill. And, what do we expect to happen 100 years from now?
And that's why it's important to have detention. So if you just put everything in a pipe and it shut up to the river, that's what you're going to start to see, where it just flows and there's nowhere to kind of contain the water. So no matter what we're starting to think about, and you know, it fits in line with water quality and health, and is how do you start to store the water in strategic locations so that you can release.
But it's closed from, I guess, City Park, huh? Through.
Yes, yeah, and that's kind of our limit.
It's all underground.
It goes, you know, even south
Yeah.
of City Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the biggest basin, and we've built on top of it. So there's a lot of need there. But the models that we've run, you know, that is 3,300 CFS, so cubic feet per second.
Yeah,
It's
well,
running
they're
in the
aware of
black.
that then.
Yes, and we're making
water.
sure that whatever we flow, that's how we model it, to understand how much attention we need so that the 100-year, the river can work for 100 years.
A lot of the old timers, and believe me, I was a youngster then, a lot of the old timers said, you know, that's what pushed it over to Globeville, right there, just north of the railroad track. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mickey?
So with this time schedule, which is probably a year or less to try to put this together, and with the concerns that this community has, do we really have a real opportunity to understand and get involved? We don't have any expertise here. You have all these experts who are going to tell us exactly what happens. I think that we somehow need to make sure that we have some expertise, some information. I mean, in a year to basically try to understand what the engineers have been working on for 7 years, and we end up in the basin here. We need to basically have a better process than saying, we'll organize a subcommittee of civilians who's going to analyze whether this really works for the community.
And I think that's a good point. You know, the technical information that we'll bring, then there will be a lot of alternatives, a lot of options from that technical information. That's really where we can't change the technical information. It is what it is, right? We have a certain amount of water coming at us really fast in these certain locations. We look at topography and where the water's going. So it starts to almost place where it needs to be unless you're regrading or, you know, taking blocks and blocks. So where we're really hoping to have input is kind of on this connectivity and what the detention looks like, and you know, there's only so much flexibility in where it can be. We can't, you know, kind of open up the entire city of where do we want this park, or you know, open space to be, or how do we want these connections to be. So it's pretty, you know, kind of the box that it sits in is pretty defined. But we can definitely, I think, take time with those small working groups. You know, we have one-on-ones and then a smaller working group with just each project, and then bringing together all of the projects, so Park Hill, you know, City Park, Globeville, Rhino, all those folks together, and then we'll go into a public meeting. So we believe there's a lot of touch points for the community, understand there's a lot of technical data. I'm not a drainage engineer, right? So I think we do have some faith and trust in that what's coming to us, and then we kind of have to shape based on that technical information. But we can definitely go into the weeds as much as you want to on what's coming at us.
Dave?
Now, you've taken the east into consideration. Now, you say 100-year flood, 100-year storm, what is it? Because we've lived in Globeville. When we get storms off to the west, and they keep moving back and forth, everything comes downhill from Arvada, Golden, Kathy Park. When it hits here, we're in the low part. Well, if we're taking that and if the storm starts circling, we're coming from the east and the west. Have you taken in the west into consideration in all this? I mean, because we're on the low, Globeville's on the low side of the river. So when we're getting hit from the west and it circles around, and we start getting hit from the east, what do we got, John? I mean,
Number 65.
Yeah, and so again, you know, separate basins, and there is a stormwater master plan that looks at all the basins for the city, and it's a really big dollar amount, you know, to implement all those improvements to make sure that we're protecting our community in a 100-year flood. But this is just looking at the Montclair, so it doesn't look anything to the west. But not to say that's not being looked at. But this is just, we're looking in more detail. We have implementation dollars in the Montclair. Montclair is our priority basin for the city because it's the largest and it has the most flows. So it's where we prioritized, but not meaning that, you know, every basin has a list of projects and needs within it to provide those improvements. So it's our goal over the years to make those improvements.
Vern?
I have a question. You know, this looks like a monumental project here, and I guess I'm a little concerned in how the funding for this is going to take place and how it's going to affect our storm water drainage fees and things of that nature. Could you maybe just lightly touch base on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a whole nother, we can bring our Department of Finance. I mean, we can't do that in 5 minutes, right? So what I would like to do is let's bring someone from our Department of Finance, but certainly one of the things that's on the table, and this is citywide, is a wastewater rate increase to solve, because right now the city is solving these problems incrementally, meaning to the extent there are CIP dollars to fix something, we're taking little segments of the city and taking the little bitty tiny money that we have and doing improvements. This project, which is a big move, and other things we want to do in the city are going to require a wastewater fee increase, and that's been put on the table by the administration, by the budget office. So what I'd like to do is actually bring the folks and have them walk you through that rationale and how we ultimately get to a decision on a wastewater increase.
Jen, Kelly and I were just talking here. Do you think it's possible, because, you know, Leslie came quite a while ago to give us a full-blown presentation, but this was just at the inception of this issue.
Right.
Given the fact that there's so much interest and there's different, I mean, I know you guys are going to have your small working groups and all of that. Is it possible that we could have some sort of a regular update at this meeting?
Just make it a standing.
Make it a standing issue.
Sure.
This is a big enough, I mean, this is a monumental is what you used. Obviously, as you know, the National Western has issues on their own on this drainage issue also. So I think given the magnitude and given the fact that now that the IGA with CDOT is done and that you've got such a time constraint, I think this is significant enough that we ought to have updates on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, you know, not only those impacts, improvements, opportunities, right, that I like to see them in the parking lot, but also the great benefit, right, that the campus will not flood with this project, that the infrastructure that we'll be putting in will be protected. So I think having you guys weigh in on that and understand, you know, that process would be really important.
Yeah.
So we're happy to come if you all think that.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I think if you have smaller working groups with different things, I think the problem is certain small working groups may hear different things.
Sure.
And the information may get disleveled.
Yeah.
And you have issues, and I think at least this group, I think, would like to, my gut is, given the interest, that we ought to have some sort of regular input of information.
That works for me.
Great.
And I think.
Plus, we miss you.
Yes, I miss you guys too. And because we're impacting Globeville, you know, Cole, and we're on that side of the highway, we're on the south side of the highway, we are reaching out to the Globeville kind of stakeholders around the table, as well as the property owners and community to the south. So not everybody will have an opportunity to work in a small group, so I think it's a really good.
That's why I'm saying, that way you
Yeah.
even out the information,
Yeah.
everybody gets the
Okay.
same of that. Great,
Okay,
terrific.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Picture next time, please.
Okay. I'll make sure
Big
you
picture of the
see that
baby.
there.
I know.
And anybody gets a new puppy too, I want to see.
Yeah, and I see puppies too.
Kittens too.
All right, Kelly.
So I'm going to actually do in the interest of time, do RTA first, because that's in front of us, and it's tied to the success of the project. So on October 5th, we will be presenting to the State Economic Development Commission Board. We'll get you all the details. It's going to be held at the Colorado Convention Center. There are 2 applicants again. Northern Colorado will go first in the morning. We are slated to go in the afternoon, the Denver application. So there's a presentation by each of the applicants, and then there's a presentation by the third-party analyst, which was hired by the state to review the applications. And then there's a chance for us then to come back in front and dispute the assessment by the third party. So it's a little bit like a court proceeding. But it's our chance to tell the story of why this project is important. And one of the things that this is the last round of the RTA, we cannot build this project without that money. Okay, without the state money, but for the state money, we cannot fulfill the vision of the campus. So many of you are helping, are participating in that presentation, providing either letters or you're speaking. There's a public, you can sign up for a public process. Lottie Abdullah, who's the lead for us on this, has talked to many of you, and many of you are participating with us in the presentation. And I make this promise to you. It's, this is the only time, one of the few times that we're kind of asking you to stay to a script a little bit. And why that's so important is we got one shot, to get our points across to the state. And I want you to speak from your perspective, but I need your help in hitting kind of those key points we've asked you to hit, because we got to hammer home to the EDC why this project's important and why that $128 million we're now asking for, we need it. So I know some of you have had concerns about feeling like we've been prescriptive about that, and I apologize about that, but it's just the nature of this, the way this engagement is set up with the state, that we need to make sure we're hitting those key points, because this is all about driving visitors to this campus, because essentially we're taking a portion of state sales tax and getting a portion of that state sales tax based on new visitors. So there's key themes that the EDC board is going to want to hear, and you guys have lived with us through this and helped us create this, so your messaging will be an important part of that. So it's it'll be kind of an all-day affair. We're all afternoon. Again, it's at the convention center. We'll do our presentation. That's on the 5th of October. Then a recommendation will be made ultimately by the head of the EDC. Fiona will make a final recommendation to the board, and then the board decision is that the recommendation happens November 6th, so 3 days after the vote by the people, and then the final decision is the 13th of November by the state. So we'll know within 2 weeks. So November 3rd, we're successful at the ballot box. That automatically triggers the money from the state, the $250 million for the CSU facilities. And then the third piece of the puzzle will be a successful affirmative by the EDC board for now what we're seeking is $128 million based on new calculations from the state for this project.
So you say it's going to be all day?
Well, it's we'll get you. Our portion is the all afternoon, so we start like at 12:30. Loveland goes in the morning, and we start about 12:30, and we'll go till once the public process. It's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's a good portion of the day. We have it all scripted out. We will send out the timeline, and Lottie has it broken down literally minute to minute of what's going to transpire and how the kind of the engagement will happen.
Would you say the vote does not affect the RTA decision?
I would say it has a huge effect.
I mean, when they're thinking about it?
Absolutely.
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 And John, we're going to, the executive committee for the campaign meets on the 4th. We're going to cancel that meeting because of the RTA. So Drew?
Yep.
Kelly, if we can't come to speak, you said something about writing letters.
Yep.
Can we write letters?
Yep.
Who would you probably mentioned.
Coordinate that with Erica.
Erica.
So I can share that with
Erica,
you.
okay, I'll talk to you.
Just in case somebody else is interested in that. So there's a variety of ways that you can comment. One is you can register, and that has to be done by tomorrow to speak. Second, you can write a letter, and I just spoke to Betty Crown about this. You have to send it in by October 1st in order for it to be included, and they will read that letter. So someone from I think OEDIT will read that letter during the public comment period. So it'll be read out loud.
So Erica, why don't you send us whatever additional information, because we put out the roundup on Mondays.
Yeah,
So,
originally from
right, so it'll be on the 28th. Then everybody can have it in time for a letter on the 1st, right?
What's for lunch?
Huh?
I said, what's for lunch?
Yeah.
Whatever you bring.
So it's a So it's obviously it's a huge day. It's a huge week. That first week in November is a huge week for this project.
I also
and
think,
these communities.
yeah, from a perspective of the other thing, there'll be press, there'll be lots of press. So one of the things that you would not be surprised if somebody, depending on the recommendation of the analyst for the state, which is not necessarily warm and fuzzy and we're not very favorable to, you may pick up some press stuff. So for those of you who will be, hopefully all of you will be helping out on 2C, that we have to worry about that messaging piece, because we don't want to position, something out there that says, gee, the state of Colorado doesn't believe in half of what you're suggesting, which is what, of course, we're subjected to a vote of the people, right? So we're all going to have to coordinate on that, and we'll be sending, Kelly is bringing part of his team over to meet with the campaign so that we know exactly what's happening, so we can be prepared for that pushback, so that we don't get, the last thing we need in this project is more confusion. It's not that it's necessarily going to sway anybody as much as it's going to confuse people, and when people are confused, they're not receptive to voting yes. So I would second what Kelly says. It's a really huge day. Okay. Anything else?
Do you want me to do updates on that?
Yeah.
All right. So on the project, so we at the EOC, I'll hit the high points of the work. We're teeing up a bunch of work. So we've got just got word today the green light on getting the rail consolidation work started. That is one of our critical path items. So that's moving the rail off the river, consolidating it down the current National Western Drive. So that work will begin. That's so we're going to be engaging Denver Rock Island on that work with us. That's one. Two is we have acquired through a third party the International Paper Building, which is at the corner of basically Franklin and Race. International Paper left the state. They're no longer. It was a recycling facility. It's a 4-acre site. They were going to sell it to somebody else. We got word of it and were able to step in and acquire that parcel. We had to move some money around to make that happen, but the good news is we will be closing on that building in the end of October here.
Kelly, is that the one right on the rail line?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that the one the stock show saved from the marijuana?
No, that's a different one. That's a different one.
It's a different one.
But one, I will tell you that building set up, the International Paper Building, which is a 72,000 square foot warehouse, also was in line for more marijuana uses. So we are now the proud owners of our first building within the campus of the National Western Center. We, the city and county of Denver. So that's getting ready to go through council. So that's been keeping us busy. And then we've got about a dozen or so other property owners we're working with on our opportunistic side. The historic assessment work, Atkins is going to be doing some of the next step of our historic assessment work. That's again in one of our exhibits of the master plan. So that work that tees up ultimately setting the stage for grants that we would go to the state potentially on to restore some of those properties, like the Armor Administration Building or the 1916 building or the 1909 Stadium Arena. So there's some due diligence that's required that sets the stage for grants. And then the grants help us then move forward on the restoration of those. So we're starting that work. And then we are doing an equestrian. So we're having we're dusting off the program that we developed as part of the master planning work, and we're starting to look at the equestrian building, and we're going to do some truth testing and some assessments with Paul's team and some equestrian experts here that are local to set the stage for building a more detailed program around the equestrian center building. And then we will do that. Once we finish that, then we will start the livestock. And that, again, it's all about setting the stage for the ultimate design work that will have to happen for those buildings. And then probably the really big effort that we're working with community planning and development on is the public realm study, which Drew represents. So that's all the open spaces on the campus. What does that feel like from a placemaking perspective? So that's one piece of it, and then the other piece are the design standards which will be the second component of that study. So we're going to kick that off with the public realm study. We hope to get an RFP out here in October, and someone under control, or someone selected by the end of the year, early part of the year, to start that work. So that'll be like a year-long process between the public realm study, of which this group will be very active in that effort, as well as the design standards. That'll be a year-long effort. So those are some highlights of probably the 12 different things we're working on right now. Yep.
What about Tom Anthony's building, and what is that, Lure Rouge or whatever that building? The old
La Mouton.
La Mouton.
Yeah.
So those are obviously, we are in negotiations with Tom Anthony to acquire his building. There's dueling appraisals. That process under the Federal Relocation Act process, which is a process we're using. He can ask for an appraisal. We can do an appraisal. We pay for that appraisal that Tom's asked for. So that process is going on in terms of appraisals. And then if you're within 10% of those appraisals, then you just split the difference and cut the deal. If you're more than that, then there's a third appraisal. So we're working through that process with Tom. That's one. And then the La Mouton building would be one of the many pieces of land we have to acquire. The intent is, before the end of the year, is to put a land acquisition ordinance in front of City Council for all the parcels that fall within the boundaries of the campus. And that then officially will kick off the land acquisition process for all the parcels we have to acquire to make the campus happen. But the first step is a land acquisition ordinance we have to take through City Council to give us the right to go do that. And the La Mouton building is one of those buildings. They would, once council signs off on the ordinance, then we start to issue letters to all those property owners, and that kicks off the official process for acquisition.
Yeah, if they turn that into marijuana grow, that's massive.
Which is all the more reason why land acquisition is our number one task coming out of the election. Yes, sir.
Does that include the cattle crossing, the bridge?
Yes, it does, and that is that's part of our that's in our historic inventory of structures that we will look to try to restore and reuse. Yes.
Speaking of the bridge, has there
Which
been
bridge?
That cattle crossing bridge John's talking about? But that made me think of, we have a power grid system that comes across the river, just north of that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any discussion or anything with Xcel Energy on what's going to happen with that and how that's going to affect the site?
So another one of our critical path items, which we won't start till after the election, is the whole infrastructure conversation. So Eric has talked about our energy, waste, and water systems, which is getting this campus to net zero energy. And so Xcel and Denver Water and other parties will be a part of that conversation. We're setting the stage for those conversations. We've not started those conversations yet, but those will begin post-election, and so that, along with a lot of other things we're going to have to talk to Xcel about and Denver Water, and we want them to be our partners in how this campus operates, because there's Xcel can put a lot of requirements on us, as an example, a substation and other things, and we need to work through those things with them.
Is city acquisition condemnation ultimately?
That's a tool in the toolkit. Doesn't mean you have to use condemnation.
Okay, but city, that's the beginning of the process.
That allows us to use that tool if it's necessary, correct.
Is everything on the timeline looking good for the stock show to be able to be up and running next year as planned?
Mr. Andrews?
No, I'm not talking about, you know how I'm just asking an encouraging question here. You know how we're going to do this whole thing, but every year the stock show is going to be able to be open.
Absolutely.
And so it's all looking good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there is no other option. Paul, really, to reaffirm, Paul, there is no other option. The stock show will be functional.
Check, no vacation for Paul.
Yeah.
Take a 5-year
I'm sure
vacation.
you tell us if it wasn't, but I'd just like us to remember that that's...
No, that's built into our schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Anything else on that end?
I just am so thrilled that you got the tracks moved, because
We haven't gotten a move yet. I mean,
Well, I mean, that you've got the people talking that need to talk about it.
That's the first step.
For people that, we've tried to get crossings repaired in the little neighborhoods, and when you get into who the responsible parties are, it's phenomenally complicated, so that's kudos. I don't know how many hundreds of conversations that, but that's exciting.
thanks.
Oh, why don't you ask? Kelly? I'm not sure I understand. Go ahead.
Hi. I have a question about, I'm proud of the women and micro business women of the neighbor, or every woman live in the neighbor, and we're looking for a commercial kitchen. Just think about us, because we are community. I hear about community. I want to see something.
So,
I need a commercial kitchen. It's 12 women with values, with a lot of talent on traditional food, and we open to vegetarian, any kind of food. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. And any question, I'm here, and I'm free to ask, to answer. And I have a lot of questions.
So the question about a commercial kitchen, so one of the 4 components of the CSU program is actually a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, we need a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, I need a lot of things, but the first one is commercial kitchen, license, insurance, transportation for the food. And imagine that I-70 have a lot of transformation. All those workers need food.
Right.
I'm here. I'm proud of the community, 12 women. It's
looking
money
for-
they
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
here in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. They help us to the families
Okay.
to. I'm proud of the grow house. I'm proud of those women, but for my principal point is I'm community.
Got it. Okay.
Okay,
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, next on the agenda is the membership criteria discussion. It is now 7:53 p.m.
So I'd like to make a suggestion on that, is that we
Let-
table it.
That is, yeah.
Can we table it in sort of a framework to take the pressure off in general, I would like to suggest. We've got this election coming up, this TSA,
RTA.
TSA, that we're gonna be successful at. And I just kind of would like to invite us to target the January meeting to discuss the focus and next phase of the National Western Center Advisory Committee, and talk among ourselves between now and then to revisit how the NWCAC was formed, and what the combination is of what we have that I think is working really great in many ways, and what we need to do to enhance it, and talk to each other. And I don't want us to have a pressured conversation about this myself, and I don't want it to be politicized, and I do feel we're heading into some shifts here, depending what happens in November. So that's a suggestion.
John.
Let's deal with it. Get it on next month's agenda, get it done, and get this
No.
thing wrapped up so we can get to work.
All right, so Terrence and I are going to use our rights as co-facilitators. I think we ought to wait until after the election. I think the Citizens Advisory Committee is a very different entity if we don't win in November, and if we don't get the RTA. So I know a lot of you don't want to think about that, but I am superstitious, and I'm 40 days out, and I run like I'm always 20 points behind. So the bottom line is, I just think that's a very different. It's a very different thing.
Either way.
Either way.
Direction.
Either way, in either direction. And John, love you madly, but you know what?
We're vetoing you.
We're vetoing you.
And there's no override.
There's no, yeah, that's right.
Told you so.
So, I don't disagree. I think we ought to put it off. I think A's comments are appropriate. I'm not locked. It could be December, but could be December. Let's not say January the 3rd.
We're going to celebrate in December. December will be the month of celebrations.
One last thing for anybody who hasn't yet signed it, if you want to sign an endorsement for the 2C, the more we have online, the better, because people are going to the.
How many a week?
Yeah.
50 a
So we
week?
have a chance.
And please understand that we don't put anybody's name on the website unless we have a signed piece of paper, because we don't want any confusion that people will say, I never told you to put my name on. So we would like for you all, for all of you who want your name used, please sign your little endorsement sheet.
Your address does not go.
Flossie.
Your name is
Yes.
You have an announcement.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, just, I know somebody else mentioned something on October 8th, Clinica's.
That's at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I know. So at 5:30 p.m. here at the National Western, Clinica has its gala event on Thursday, October 8th. And Maria's chairing it. We have a couple of great tables and sponsors from Maria and Nikki, and the Business Association and Larry always have a table. So if it's something you're interested in, we'd love to have you be there or learn more about it. And it's going to be a great celebration, and it's right here.
Right. Let us know. If, you know what? We'll put it on the roundup for some of you want to attend.
Roger this stuff this
Okay,
week.
good. Because we do have availability of seats and complimentary that you all, some of you can sit at if you want to come. So let us know, and we'll go from there.
What time is that?
It starts at 5:30. And then the dinner and the program starts at 6:30.
And if you guys are all really wealthy and rich, you can all bet on the fact that I volunteered to cook for 12 people. Okay, a traditional Cuban dinner. So whoever you want to bid on this sucker, please encourage your friends and whatever. That's right. So I've got an auction item that's really important, and I'm a really good Cuban cook. Okay, so I just want you to know. No, we're not going to do it in Cuba, Lesky. You know, Dave's still trying to get to Cuba.
Does that include cigars after dinner?
It does include cigars, because when I was in the DR, I brought 2 boxes.
Excellent.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
There you go.
So things are good?
Ryan gave me one job yesterday. He's like, why are you short a bunch of logs for creamer?
Well, let's talk, because I'll take them over there. We have a place we store them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, wait, when should I bug you to talk?
Not till after the first.
Okay.
Hi.
So,
Hi, how are you?
Is it really? How do you want to meet?
I felt like that's too bad. That is too bad.
No, this is crazy.
So why don't we just, can I just give you a call?
Yeah.
I just, I have enough.